During that dinner in my own home, my father's words struck like poison hurled across the dishes. "You and that kid of yours are nothing but parasites draining this family." My mother just smiled, her head bobbing as if she had waited years for that scene to unfold. The cruel irony was almost laughable. They were seated in my house eating food bought with my paycheck. I didn't shed a tear or even flinch. I met their eyes and said they had one day to move out. The air went still, the silence heavy. But long before that night, I had already been quietly planning for this moment of reckoning. From the outside, you'd never guess my family was fractured. We were the kind of people who grinned too widely in Christmas photos, the kind everyone in the neighborhood thought had a perfect life. My mother was the pie-baking volunteer at every church fundraiser. My father shook hands like a local celebrity at cookouts, and my brother, Knox, was the golden boy. Every conversation somehow turned into praise for Knox, his big dreams, his latest idea. I, on the other hand, was the silent one, the safety net, the one expected to patch the holes when things fell apart. That dinner wasn't some isolated explosion. It was the culmination of years of tiny wounds stitched into one long scar. As a child, I can still see myself standing barefoot on the cold kitchen tiles, listening to my mother hum over a pot of chili. She smelled of cinnamon and detergent, looking perfectly ordinary yet radiating a constant warning. Don't make waves. Don't question. Keep the family first, even when it meant losing yourself. That rule became my invisible prison. By 16, I already knew exactly where I ranked. Knox could crash a car and Dad would laugh it off. Boys will be boys. I'd bring home an A- in physics, and Mom would sigh, "Don't be so hard on yourself, Nova. Not everyone can sparkle like Knox." I used to lie in bed staring at those plastic stars on my ceiling, wondering if anyone saw me for more than what I sacrificed. A decade later, I had a child of my own, Asher, my anchor, the living proof that life could still hold something pure. He's 12 now, bright, gentle, still believing in the goodness of people. When he was born, wrapped in hospital white, clutching my finger with that tiny hand, I made a promise. I'd never let him fade into the background. Maybe that's why that dinner, that one cruel night, cut so deep. He was upstairs then, likely with his ear pressed against the floorboards, catching every venomous word his grandfather hurled and every cruel silence his grandmother offered in return. The thought gutted me. What legacy was I leaving my son if I allowed that same poison to seep into him? The house where they shredded my dignity belonged to me. I had earned it. Long hours under fluorescent lights, code reviews bleeding into dawn, endless meetings where I had to outwork everyone just to be seen as competent. Every inch of that house had been paid for with sacrifices no one in my family ever cared to notice. Yet there they sat, scraping their forks across my plates, sipping wine from my glasses, acting as though my labor was their right. And it wasn't even a new pattern. The phone calls had become their steady rhythm. "Could you spot us for rent this month?" Dad's truck gave out again. "Knox just needs a bit of startup cash. He's this close to success." At first, I convinced myself it was just family helping each other through a rough patch, but the rough patch hardened into a routine. The routine calcified into duty, and that duty turned into a set of invisible shackles. I came to know the exact tone in Mom's voice before she even spoke, a tight, practiced tremor, as if she'd rehearsed the script. Dad didn't bother with pleasantries. His words were orders, and Knox, ever the dreamer, left the begging to them while he spun his recycled pitch to investors. Still, I kept agreeing. Every time I said yes, I felt like I was buying back my worth. Every time I swore it was the final favor, it never truly was. So when you picture me looking my father in the eye and giving him 24 hours to pack up and go, understand that moment wasn't born from a flash of bravery. It was years of weight finally collapsing inward. What broke wasn't my temper, it was my endurance. The end didn't explode. It crept in quietly like cold air seeping through the cracks of a locked door until it chills every corner. It began with one call, Mom's name glowing on my screen just as I was about to shut down my laptop. For a second, I hovered, already braced. Her calls rarely carried good news. Still, I picked up, clinging to the faint hope this time might be different. Her voice quivered, but I knew the melody by heart, the same practiced plea, the same trembling guilt. "Nova," she said, Your father needs surgery. They think his heart could fail if we don't move fast. And the house, we're 300,000 behind, the bank's moving to foreclose. I pressed my hand to the cool glass of my office window, the city lights smearing into streaks below. I wanted to trust her, but I'd walked this path too many times before. The numbers were big, the stories fuzzy, and the request unchanged. Help us. I finally said I'd host dinner. Bring Dad, bring Knox. We'll talk, all together. She hesitated a moment too long before agreeing, as if the idea of meeting in person had thrown her off balance. That night, once Asher was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table writing rules on a yellow sticky note like it was sacred text. No insults toward my son. No money. End the meeting if things turn hostile. I slid that note under my dinner plate like a charm, but unease still churned inside me. I called Tessa, my steady voice since college, the one who'd helped me weather every storm. We met at our usual coffee shop on 6th Street, corner booth by the window. She was already twirling a pencil when I arrived. They're lying, she said flatly after hearing me out. Maybe not, I protested, though even I didn't sound convinced. Nova, really. No receipts, no records, no medical forms. They want your wallet, not your help. You can't keep bleeding for people who'd let you die empty. Her words hit like a slap because deep down I knew she was right. Then she leaned in, her tone sharp and quiet. Record the dinner. Texas is one-party consent. If it goes bad, you'll have evidence. Don't let them rewrite the story this time. I nodded, my stomach knotted tight, promising myself I'd do exactly that. The next day crawled by. Every tick of the clock scraped against my nerves. When evening finally came, I arranged the table like a ritual. 4 plates, 4 glasses, napkins squared, silverware gleaming. Outside, the pool caught the porch light perfectly still, as if even the water was waiting. Asher sat on the couch, his homework spread like armor between us. I brushed a strand of hair off his forehead. Tonight's an adult night, I whispered. You'll stay with Harper. No complaints. He groaned but agreed, too used to sudden plans to argue. When the knock came, it thudded straight through my chest. Mom entered first, arms full of barbecue like she was arriving for some friendly potluck. Dad followed, smaller than I remembered, but with that same cold glint in his eyes. And Knox, last as always, swaggered in, phone buzzing in his hand, smirk already in place, like victory was guaranteed. We sat. For a while, Mom filled the silence with small talk, old neighbors, birthdays, her famous potato salad, her usual distraction tactic, soft smiles before the knife. I stopped her mid-sentence. Let's see the documents, I said. Hospital records, bank letters, whatever you've got. Her smile cracked. Dad's gaze flickered toward Knox. He shifted, cleared his throat. There isn't any paperwork, Mom said at last, her voice tightening. You'll just have to take our word for it. That word, trust, struck harder than any insult. It had always been their sharpest tool. Trust us when we emptied your college savings. Trust us when Knox's grand idea went under. Trust us when you worked yourself raw to keep the lights on. Knox jumped in then, his voice smooth and bright like a salesman's pitch. This new venture will change everything, Nova. Augmented reality. You're in tech. You get it. We just need a small boost to launch. I stared at him, jaw locked. He'd turned my own field into bait, waving it like a prize he knew I'd never claim. Then my father snapped. His palm struck the table, sending the silverware clattering. You make $350 a year, Nova. How can you just sit there and let your family drown? My mother's tone was gentler, but the edge was sharper. Asher's a wilder, too. Don't you want him to understand where he comes from? That line nearly broke me, using my son as leverage, pulling him into their endless cycle of guilt and need. My hands trembled under the table, but when I spoke, my voice was measured, almost cold. No, I will not sell my child's future to fix your chaos. Not this time. Knox scoffed, twisting his mouth into a sneer. Playing the victim again, huh? You just got lucky. Some of us have vision. Some of us have to scrape by. The room tilted, their faces blurring through my rising fury. My mother's eyes hardened, my father's fists clenched. Their voices merged into a storm of blame and manipulation, and then Knox slipped. The words spilled out before he could stop them. The debt. Most of it's mine. Mom and Dad just covered for me. The air froze. Mom went pale, her expression cracking. Dad turned away, shame flickering across his face. That was the truth. It had never been about hospital bills or foreclosure. It was always about Knox. Then my mother's eyes flashed, cold and desperate. "If you don't help, I'll make it public," she hissed. "Everyone will know what kind of daughter you are. I'll even drag Asher into it if I must." Her threat sliced through me like ice. She would use my son as ammunition, and something in me locked into place. Quiet, final, unmovable. "And you have 24 hours, I said again, voice steady, absolute. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, and in that stillness I knew this wasn't a family argument anymore. It was open war. When they slammed the door behind them, the house didn't feel calm. It felt empty, hollow, echoing with the weight of everything that had just shattered. The refrigerator hummed softly, the kitchen clock ticked on, but every sound felt razor sharp, cutting through the quiet like glass splinters. I gathered their untouched plates and dropped them into the sink one at a time. Each ring of porcelain on steel echoed the years I had poured into saving a family that only ever pulled me under. Relief should have followed, but what came instead was grief. Not for them, but for the lie I had lived. Upstairs, a warm glow leaked from Asher's room. He'd come home from Harper's right before they left. Sitting cross-legged on his bed, he was bent over a notebook, sketching rockets like nothing in the world had shifted downstairs. When I stepped in, he didn't lift his head. "Did they go?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. "For good." I hesitated. "We'll see." He didn't respond, just kept drawing, tiny flames bursting from the tail of a crude rocket. I bent down, kissed his hair, and said, "You don't have to worry, I've got us." But I knew I was trying to convince myself just as much as him. The next morning, the buzzing started. Constant, relentless. Not calls, notifications. My stomach dropped when I saw the source. TikTok. There was my mother, performing like she'd been born for it, tears streaking perfectly as she wept about her cold-hearted daughter, who abandoned her parents in their time of need. She even held up pictures of me and Asher in front of our home in West Austin, parading them as proof of my cruelty. The hashtags hit like stones. See, ungrateful, daughters, family, betrayal, heartless. I scrolled until my hands trembled. Strangers debated my worth as if they knew me. Some sympathized with my parents. Others condemned me. How could she do that to her own family? Poor father. Imagine being thrown out by your daughter. That boy deserves better. That boy, Asher. My chest seized. If she dragged him into this, he'd be mocked at school before he even understood what betrayal meant. By noon, the video had passed 100,000 views. By evening, 500,000. At work, I felt the stares before I heard the whispers. My manager eventually called me in, his tone careful, probing. "Everything all right at home, Nova? Anything we should be aware of?" I smiled, lied through my teeth, said I had it handled. Inside, I was wildfire. Tessa didn't wait for me to reach out. She caught me at our usual booth, her laptop already open, eyes sharp and steady. "Save every file," she said, "every screenshot. Screenshots, links, timestamps." Tessa's tone was firm but restrained. "This isn't gossip anymore, it's defamation," she said. "They're not just trying to shame you, they're attacking your name. So you fight back with proof." And that's what I did. I saved every shred of evidence. The videos, the comments, the messages that started trickling in afterward. By midnight, a folder labeled case sat on my desktop. It looked sterile, impersonal, yet it felt like armor. The next few days blurred together. My father texted, pleading for one last bridge loan. Knox uploaded his own clips, rewriting the story into a saga where I'd ruined his ambitions. My mother followed with new performances, her tears perfectly placed, whispering about my supposed divorce and Asher's broken home. Then, in the middle of it all, Marin called, my real estate attorney, the one calm voice amid the chaos. Her tone was steady. "There's a clause in your parents' mortgage," she said. "They refinanced 2 years ago. It's in default. The bank can sell to any qualified buyer without their approval. If you want to take the house, Nova, now's your window." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to air filling my lungs. Not defense, but movement. I gathered the paperwork, gave Marin authorization, and within days, The process had begun. The East Austin property, the same one where my college savings had evaporated into Knox's failed dream, was about to be mine. It wasn't just a transaction, it was reclamation. Once the sale closed, Marin sent official notices. My parents and Knox had 24 hours to vacate or face legal action. She also delivered a cease and desist to my mother over the videos. Knox erupted, flooding my phone with insults, calling me a traitor. My father shifted to bargaining, offering repayments he could never afford. My mother doubled down online, her audience cheering her on, but their noise no longer reached me. I hired cleaners, changed the locks, and walked through the East Austin house like someone reopening an old scar. The air smelled of dust and something heavier, regret. In the attic, the crew found a small, battered box buried beneath holiday decorations and rusted tools. Inside were my grandfather's original will, a stack of bank statements, and a letter addressed to me. My hands shook as I unfolded it. His handwriting was frail but unmistakable. The money is for Nova's education. No one else's dream, no one else's debts. My vision blurred. Proof. After years of being cast as the selfish one, here it was. Quiet, undeniable validation. I added the letter to my growing archive. Another weapon in a war I never wanted but could no longer avoid. While I built my case, Asher tried to cling to normalcy. Basketball practice, science projects, late nights with his telescope aimed at the stars. But even the sky couldn't drown out the whispers that followed him at school. One night, he looked up from his drawings and asked softly, "Why does Grandma hate us?" The question hit like a blade to the throat. "She doesn't hate you," I told him carefully. "She's made choices that hurt people, and when some people hurt, they try to pull everyone else into their pain." He nodded, slow, thoughtful, then turned back to sketching, his pencil scratching across the page like it could erase what neither of us could say aloud. Later, I sat alone on the back porch, staring at the still water in the pools, its reflection trembling in the porch light. Every sacrifice, every swallowed word, every boundary I'd let them trample played back in my head until something inside me shifted. I was done defending myself. My mother could keep her performances. My brother could cling to his fantasy. My father could polish his guilt. But I had the one thing they couldn't twist anymore. The truth. Written, signed, and real. The next time they faced me, I wouldn't be unarmed. I'd have paperwork, proof, and every scar reforged into resolve. This time, the reckoning was mine. Airports aren't built for endings, though people pretend they are. New jobs, honeymoons, reunions. For me, the Austin terminal became a courtroom without walls. Their flight arrived late in the afternoon. I stood just past the security rope, Marin beside me, calm as ever. The folder of documents pressed tight in her hands. The air smelled of jet fuel and reheated fries. Overhead, a muted TV played the news, but all I could hear was the steady, heavy rhythm of my heart. Knox came off first, striding like a man stepping into his own spotlight, his phone already in motion, smirk half-formed. My mother followed, clutching a travel pillow, face set in practiced fatigue, an actress mid-scene. My father lagged behind, slower now, eyes scanning the crowd like he was calculating his next move. They saw me immediately. My mother's expression brightened, not with love, but with triumph, as if she'd already won. She stepped forward. "Nova, thank God you're here. We knew you'd come around." I didn't move. Marin stepped forward instead, calm and surgical, and handed them 3 envelopes. "Consider yourselves served." The confusion hit them first, then disbelief. Knox ripped his open, eyes racing over the text until the color drained from his face. He looked up, voice cracking the tension that hung over the gate. "You bought the house?" "Yes," I said, my tone even. "It's mine now, legally. If you're not out by the deadline, the sheriff will make sure you are." My father's jaw tightened until the muscle jumped. My mother just blinked, speechless, while the slow current of travelers began to hesitate, drawn to the tension hanging in the air. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering, "What's happening?" Knox's voice rose above the hum of the terminal, desperate, theatrical. "You're a thief," he shouted. "You've hated me from the start, jealous, always trying to ruin me." I stepped forward, voice low but sharp enough to slice through his noise. You mean since you drained my college fund? Since you made promises you never kept and left me sleeping on floors while you played the genius? Gasps stirred from the crowd. Strangers didn't know the details, but they could feel the fracture. Knox tried to meet my stare, but his eyes flicked away. My mother jumped in, trembling just enough to sell sincerity. We did it for the family, Nova. For you. You've just become so cold. We were only trying to survive. I reached into my bag and pulled out my grandfather's letter, its paper yellowed but steady in my grip. This was never yours to spend, I said. He left it for my education. Not your debts, not Knox's fantasies. You turned his faith into a justification. For once, her tears stopped mid-performance. My father tried to recover his footing, his voice booming like a judge reclaiming his courtroom. Enough. You don't humiliate your family in public. I straightened my spine. You did that yourselves. Every lie, every debt, every attempt to drag my child into your chaos. That ends now. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not guilt, but fear. The raw kind born when control finally slips away. Marin's voice cut through next, crisp and unshaken. You've been served. Any further contact outside legal channels will be treated as harassment. Violate the order, and escalation will follow immediately. Around us, the circle of onlookers thickened, pretending indifference while tilting their phones, recording every second. The shame they'd weaponized against me now turned on them. Knox broke first, shouting, "You'll regret this! You think you're better because you got lucky? You're nothing without us!" I leaned in close, my voice steady. Low. I'm better because I chose not to become you. His face twisted, fury flashing, but his fists stayed at his sides. Even Knox wasn't foolish enough to lash out under the gaze of so many cameras. Then my mother tried one final plea, her voice cracking. "Please, Nova, don't do this. We'll lose everything." I met her eyes, the woman who had taught me to stay small, to swallow my pain. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sorrow. Just the clean, quiet weight of freedom. "So did I said. "When you took that from me at 18, you taught me exactly what loss feels like. Now it's your turn to live with the cost." The silence that followed felt seismic, the kind that cracks something deep and permanent. My father's shoulders slumped. My mother's face seemed to fold in on itself. Knox trembled, the last trace of his arrogance splintering away. Security arrived, drawn by the noise. Marin stepped forward smoothly, explaining the situation as she handed over the paperwork with professional ease. The officers nodded, their quiet authority closing the scene like the final swing of a gavel. As they were guided toward baggage claim, my mother turned, searching my face for any hint of hesitation. She found none. I stood still, my breath measured, my hands steady. For once, the burden didn't rest on me. It was theirs to carry. When the onlookers drifted away, I sank onto a bench, the tremor of adrenaline rippling through me. Marin sat beside me, her hand gentle on my shoulder. "You did it," she said, "but I knew better. Wins like this don't end cleanly. Public wars leave echoes, and reputations rarely die without noise." Still, in that moment, in the hum of the terminal beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, I let myself feel something I hadn't in years. Victory. Not the kind with applause or champagne, but the quiet kind, born of survival and reclaimed power. When I stepped outside into the Texas sun, my phone buzzing in my pocket, I thought of Asher, of his sketches, his telescope, his quiet strength, and I swore that no matter what storm followed, I'd meet it with the same unflinching resolve, because now I finally knew I could win. The days after the airport felt disorienting, like walking into a house where every piece of furniture had been shifted. The air was the same, but the gravity was different. My phone stayed still for once. No pleading messages from my mother, no grand plans from Knox, no thunderous calls from my father. The quiet was strange, almost foreign, but peace never lasts long in families like mine. The backlash hit quickly. My mother posted again, her final act. This time, there were no tears, no accusations. She turned on Knox instead, her voice clipped and defensive, spinning excuses, pleading for forgiveness. She claimed he'd pulled her into his schemes, that she'd only ever wanted to help. Her confession should have felt like justice, but all I felt was hollow. When your mother uses a public platform as her confessional booth, her apologies stop meaning anything. Knox unraveled next. His videos grew erratic, his charm replaced by panic. He ranted about betrayal, about how I had robbed him of his future, but the truth had already caught up. His company was gone, his image shattered, the house that once held his illusions now legally out of reach. In the end, even Knox's followers drifted away, their sympathy evaporating. And my father, the man who'd always filled silence with control, did the most shocking thing of all. He disappeared into it. No messages, no excuses, just absence, dissolving like smoke after the fire burned out. The legal process moved steadily forward, each step deliberate, and guided me through it all with her calm, surgical focus. The will, the IOUs, the refinance documents, together they told a story that no one could rewrite. The judge ruled in my favor, securing the property and protecting me from further harassment. There was no money to recover. That part of my past was already ash, but the acknowledgement mattered. The truth existed now in ink and record, not just inside me. The East Austin house was officially mine. I brought in a crew to clear it. Decades of dust, clutter, and ghosts. They unearthed boxes filled with broken gadgets, unopened envelopes, and photo albums fading into sepia. I kept only one thing, my grandfather's letter. Everything else, I let go. Asher came with me on the final day. We stood in the yard beneath the wide pecan tree, its branches thick with summer leaves. He looked up, then turned to me. "Can we plant one at our house?" he asked. I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "This time we'll watch it grow together." Back home in West Austin, we dug into the soil, our hands dirty, the air heavy with heat. We planted a young pecan tree, small but solid, and Asher checked it every morning, certain it would sprout overnight. I told him what my grandfather once told me. Trees and trust both take time. Life began to settle again. Friday taco nights returned. Homework sprawled across the kitchen table. Laughter replaced the tension that had once haunted every meal. When a journalist reached out, I agreed to talk. Not to shame them, but to speak for those still stuck in that same quiet pain. The story went live, unvarnished and raw. Messages poured in. Strangers sharing their own scars, daughters scapegoated, sons disowned for saying no. Reading their words, I felt something like healing, the strange relief that comes when pain becomes proof of survival. One warm evening, as Asher worked on a science project, Tessa and I sat on the porch, cicadas buzzing in the trees. She leaned back, sipping her iced tea. "You know," she said, "you could make this your calling, helping people like you. Turning what your mom tried to destroy into something that saves others." I thought about it. Advocacy, community work, transforming the wreckage into something useful. For the first time, the idea didn't scare me. It felt like purpose. Later that night, I tucked Asher into bed. He slid a drawing under his pillow, a rocket ship aimed for Mars, its flames bright, stars scattered above. And I knew, as surely as that rocket would rise, so would we. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're free to dream, Ash. No one will ever take that from you." As I turned off the light, the truth settled over me. The real victory wasn't in defeating my family, it was in creating one with my son. A family grounded in love, guarded by boundaries, and nurtured with honesty. The pecan tree outside would take years to bear fruit, but it was ours. A living promise that the future could grow from the wreckage. People say family means safety, protection, love, but sometimes the ones bound to you by blood are the first to draw blood. I spent years wearing their betrayal like armor, believing that if I just gave a little more, they'd finally see me. They never did, and that's what I want you to understand. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's control dressed in sentiment. So I chose differently. I chose peace. I chose my son. I chose to stop apologizing for protecting what we've built. And if you've ever stood in that same impossible place, torn between saving yourself or staying loyal to the ones who broke you, hear me, you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest act isn't forgiveness, it's refusal. Refusal to shrink, to bend, to return to the fire that burned you. If this story touched something quiet inside you, tell me in the comments. Share your own, because every time we speak, we prove that silence doesn't win. And if you want more stories like this, ones that remind you it's never too late to reclaim your voice, subscribe. It means more than you know.